Part 148. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1476. When Haru and Balu made a fuss again and started spitting cold air at each other, Gretel stopped them in time and sent them to squat on the ground. After squatting for a while, watching the two-headed ogre's left foot turn to the right foot, and the right foot to the left foot, he became a little impatient. He flew out two powerful magician hands to hold down their shoulders and said in a deep voice, "I'll count 1, 2, 3, and you stand up as fast as possible. 1, 2, 3. As soon as the powerful mage withdrew his hand, Haru jumped up like a flying monkey. Just as he stood firm, his whole body swayed and he fell down with his eyes still open. Gretel was prepared. With a move of his finger, he performed a feather falling technique and was released lightly. Haru fell backwards, falling slower and slower, and finally fell to the ground swaying without stirring up any dust. He lay on the ground for a moment, then slowly blinked his eyes and sat up with his body propped up. "Ah, I felt dizzy just now. Do you have a headache?" Gretel suddenly asked. Balu looked at Haru, and Haru looked at Balu. Both pairs of eyes blinked a few times at the same time, and their arms were raised at the same time, each holding a head. It hurts again, jumping and hurting. It does look like a headache caused by cerebral ischemia." Greet frowned and sighed. "Is it still too much? One heart, supplying blood to two heads, is really a bit unable to hold on. As for whether there is stenosis of the cerebral arteries, it is difficult to say. Theoretically it won't happen, the original head and the new head look the same size, and theoretically the cerebral arteries should be the same thickness. Have the two common carotid arteries, which branch from the ascending aorta and are bisected in two, and the corresponding common jugular vein become narrowed? This, probably, maybe, should be there, right? But for one thing, there was no normal single-headed ogre standing in front of him for him to scan and compare, and Gretel was not sure. Furthermore, what if it is determined? Widen the hole on his collarbone and control the blood vessels to grow thicker? This area originally affects the whole body. The trachea, esophagus, countless thick and thin blood vessels, nerves, and lymphatic vessels have to be squeezed through such a small hole. Back then, he had to memorize the situation and solve the problem. Now, what about modifying Haru's anatomy? Gretel's instinctive reaction was that it couldn't be done, it was impossible, and he didn't dare to do it. "You're in trouble. It doesn't hurt if you have one head, but it hurts if you have two heads. It seems like your body can't support two heads." Gretel sighed softly. Balu and Haru blurted out at the same time without thinking. "That can't be cut." "Yes, you can't cut it?" "Can't cut." Gretel raised his eyebrows slightly. Of course, he would not give such advice as since you can't hold two heads, then chop off one. However, these two heads usually quarrel with each other, but now it is rare for them to agree. "Of course you can't chop it off. It's so hard for us to grow a head. It's so hard. If you chop it off, it won't grow back. Besides, when I only have one head, I can't afford to feed those 13 a wife." Well, growing a head means that the ogre's strength has decisively increased, which cannot be cut off casually. But how to improve the ogre's heart function so that blood can flow to the brain more smoothly? Gretel thought hard and pointed at the ogre. With a flick of his fingers, an inspiration spell fell on Haru. "Come on, go out for a run and try casting a few more spells. Let me see if you get a headache." In Gretel's understanding, the encouragement technique is equivalent to a tiny amount of adrenaline. It can speed up people's heartbeat and breathing, increase blood pressure, speed up blood flow, and improve blood supply. If the heart strength is insufficient, resulting in insufficient blood supply to the brain, a stimulation technique should be able to improve it. While thinking about it, he casually threw 2 blood oxygen detection magic spells on the 2 heads of the ogre. The blood oxygen saturation is 99%, which is pretty good. I wonder what will happen after the run? As you command. I'm going. Baluharu respectfully agreed and ran away. The big man over 2 meters tall whipped up a strong gust of wind and was knocked out with a rumble. After a while, earth-shattering footsteps came from outside, as well as the bang bang bang, swishing sounds of casting spells. Greet shook his head and smiled secretly, then quickly lowered his head, drawing anatomy diagrams, and recording some of his messy thoughts. After painting for about half an hour, Baluharu was sweating profusely from running, and with a stench that became stronger after sweating, he ran in. It doesn't hurt anymore. It doesn't hurt anymore. Sir, you are so amazing, I don't feel any pain at all. Gretel didn't have time to throw a bubble spell on himself, so he quickly measured the blood oxygen saturation on the ogre's head. 97%, pretty good, but it's a pity that this spell can only stay on the surface and cannot see the deep blood vessels. But the head does not hurt, indicating that improving blood supply is indeed beneficial to the ogre's headache. But this method treats the symptoms but not the root cause. Gretel obviously cannot stay by Baluharu's side and give him motivation spells all day long. That's it? Can you use this spell yourself? Will it bless yourself? Greet pondered and slowly described the nature and characteristics of the encouragement technique. Baluharu's 2 heads shook side to side. I can't. When I grow out, I will be able to do whatever I want. If I don't know how to do it when I grow out, I won't be able to do it. Tisk, I didn't learn it by myself, but by instinct after I advanced. There's really nothing I can do about it? Gretel cast his eyes on the old dwarf. Old Mart thought about it and shook his head. Neither can I, you know, we dwarves don't need this. The wizards of the stone-armored tribes in the past few mountains can do this, but that old guy and Baluharu can't deal with it. There's nothing we can do about it. Greet searched hard and tried to recall the few words he had read in his previous life, about the treatment of chronic cerebral ischemia. Bit by bit, he translated them into a way that could be used in this world. Taking nerve-nourishing drugs. Mecobalamin. Vitamin B12. Where could he find these things? By the way, what are the foods rich in vitamin B12? If you want to avoid having a headache, you should pay attention to a few things. First of all, don't work too hard or get too excited. Try not to do things like standing up too hard, squatting there, and jumping up all of a sudden. Secondly, eat something good for your brain regularly. For example, animal offal, especially liver and kidney, clams, sardines, etc. These are all good for the brain and can protect your brain. That's a good feeling, Balu and Haru grinned together. Don't worry, sir. Don't worry. We have a lot of shells and sardines here. There are also offal. From now on, when I eat meat, I will give all the meat to them. I will only eat offal. It's not necessary, you just need to eat a little bit from time to time, and you don't have to eat too much. Greet couldn't laugh or cry. If you don't eat meat and only eat offal, your cholesterol will skyrocket every minute, and then you'll develop high blood fat, cerebral infarction, and more. Again, do you recognize the willow tree? Drink a little willow bark tea every day, not too much. Just make tea from the inner bark of a square foot of willow tree. Alas, to improve chronic cerebral insufficiency and to be careful of cerebral thrombosis, anticoagulant drugs are required. If you don't have aspirin, you can only use willow bark tea instead. Drink a little a day. Of course, the most important thing is yourself. Greet swallowed all the suggestions of doing Tai Chi, walking slowly, doing aerobics, improving cardiopulmonary function, and increasing blood oxygen saturation. If you advance earlier, your heart and lungs will become stronger and send more blood to your brain. So, work harder, work hard to advance, and strive to achieve the effect of blessing and motivation without using magic. Okay. You must work hard, Baluharu hammered his chest loudly. Gretel smiled and waved to him. Okay, let's go. Remember to come to me for a review every 1 month to see if there are any other problems and how the recovery is going. Okay. I will definitely come back. Thank you, sir. Baluharu bowed deeply and rushed out like a whirlwind. Gretel breathed a sigh of relief and quickly summoned a whirlwind to clean the indoor air. Just after cleaning, the two-headed ogre rushed back and hit the door frame with a bang. Sir! How can I repay you? Where's Rum? Where is the cloud giant Rum? Come out and negotiate the medical expenses for me. Of course, Greed himself didn't care much about money, and there was no property that could catch his fancy among these ogres. In addition to his routine dedication to the dragon's nest, Gretel himself only asked Baluharu to make him famous and attract more patients. In this way, one person passed it on to another, and Gretel's reputation in the Silver Dragon territory became more and more famous, and more intelligent races came to see him for medical treatment. When the Silver Dragon Vaska returned again, he even pulled Greet out alone, looked him up and down, and gave him a hard blow on the shoulder. Okay, boy, you didn't embarrass Cyrilla. Your fame has spread to the top. Above. Gretel bared his teeth and threw painkillers and healing spells at himself. At the same time, he raised his head and looked up at the sky through the thick stone ceiling. Above. What kind of existence is that place where the legendary silver dragons and high-level dragons gather? And what kind of responsibilities do those strong men bear? Yes, above, Vaska said in high spirits. There are other people from the dragon clan who have come all the way to see you for medical treatment. By the way, can you treat the dragon clan's diseases? Are you sure? No matter what, I'll just drag him over. Anyway, everyone has seen it, and they don't have any ideas. If it's good or bad, you can take a look at it together. Thanks to @star hometown, @dead crow for the 100 starting coins reward. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1477. After Vaska finished speaking, he suddenly transformed back into his original silver dragon form, spreading his wings and flying into the sky. Gretel looked up at him speechlessly, raised his hand to smooth his forehead hair that was messed up by the strong wind when the silver dragon took off, and sighed longly. So what kind of disease is it? Hey Gretel! Cyrilla's clear voice suddenly sounded from the side. The silver dragon girl rushed over happily. Brother is here to find you. What does he want from you? It is said that a dragon clan member is sick, let me take a look. Gretel was still struggling and answered casually. Cyrilla's voice suddenly became higher pitched. Dragon clan? Who? Which clan is it from? What disease is it? I don't know, your brother didn't say anything. Greet complained softly. He doesn't care who he is or what race he belongs to. The question is, what kind of disease or what direction the disease is coming from, you have to tell me in advance. Respiratory system? Circulatory system? Digestive system? Nervous system? Skeleton? Muscle? Or, magic system? Why don't you leave a reminder? I can also prepare in advance. At the very least, some of the books in the Dragon's Nest are already open to me. I can read them in advance about the dragon's body structure, abilities, magic, and various details, rather than trying to figure out how to become a dragon by myself. That's what my brother is like. Cyrilla's thin eyebrows also frowned. He snorted, grabbed Gretel with his backhand, and strode out. Let's go look through his collection of books. Look through them. If he doesn't tell me, I can't blame you. No, Cyrilla, is this really okay with you, I made an agreement with Vaska before, that I can only refer to part of his collection of books. The dragon clan is very careful about its collection. Greet was dragged along by her in messy steps. After walking out of the hospital, he flew to the top of Vaska's dragon's lair. Before he entered the dragon's lair, a huge force of wind suddenly hit his head. Turning his head again, he saw 4 silver dragons forming an array, holding up a ball of hazy golden light, fluttering down. The golden light was tightly shrouded in mist, and the dragons inside could not be seen. Only a huge, thunder-like voice could be heard, humming and complaining. "Fly slower, slower, don't turn, oops, I'm telling you not to turn, don't bump, faint, vomit. Turn around. Go to my house." Vaska's familiar voice shouted commands. With him as the leader, the 4 silver dragons drew a round arc, turned around, and flew towards the dragon's nest. Greet quickly pulled Cyrilla back a few steps. "Come on, let's get out of the way, don't block them." "It's okay, they should go to the top." Cyrilla twisted her body and was about to transform into a dragon shape and fly up to greet him. One rushed forward and the other pulled back. Before the struggle could produce a result, something unexpected happened in the sky. A waterfall fell out of thin air, drawing an arc in the air, and stars scattered in this direction. A sour, pungent, ammonia-flavored blast hit my face. Vomit. Cyrilla's face turned pale, she pulled Gretel, turned around and rushed into the dragon's lair. Then a strong wind blew out from the depths of the dragon's nest. Taking advantage of the surrounding air to become a little cleaner, with a breath of dragon's breath, the ice wall instantly stood up, sealing the door of the dragon's nest firmly. What is this guy doing? What is he doing? It's so annoying. It's so smelly, so dirty, so sour. Even Gretel couldn't hold it any longer. Hiding behind Cyrilla, shaky, her legs are a little weak. Although he is a master who can face the combined attacks of vomiting, diarrhea, smelly feet, and diabetic feet without changing his expression, he still can't bear the scene just now. Although the taste is not otherworldly, I can't stand the large portion. The quantity is huge. Although this liquid-solid mixture falling from the sky is just the dragon's stomach acid and stomach contents, fermented for an unknown amount of time, what is the volume of the dragon? How big is the size of an adult dragon? How big is the stomach capacity? Not to mention, Gretel has always felt that the dragon's stomach may lead to another dimension and can eat food larger than its own size. The thing that just fell from the sky is enough for 10 diabetic foot patients to line up and swim in it. The 2 people hid inside the dragon's nest, blowing each other with strong winds, drenching them with rainwater, and beating them up and down with cleaning techniques. Both of them were a little frightened. Just after one round of filming, there was a bang outside, and a depression was made in the ice wall set up by Cyrilla. Spiderweb-like cracks extended from the depression. "Greet, come out. The patient is here." "Cyrilla, untie the ice wall." "I don't." Cyrilla yelled back, completely ignoring the fact that this was her brother's dragon's nest, and it was her brother who was outside breaking the ice wall to open the door. Vaska obviously doted on this little girl. He did not forcefully break the door, but knocked lightly again and raised his voice. "Come out. It's okay. We have cleaned it up there. Don't worry, this is my own dragon's nest, how could I let him pollute it?" As he spoke, he punched a small hole in the ice wall, and colored light emitted from the hole, summoning various phantoms to show the scene on top of the dragon's nest and near the dragon's nest. While showing it, he swore and swore. "It's really clean. It's all clean. It's been cleaned for 10 miles around, and all the things he vomited were thrown into the sea. Don't worry, there's nothing on it. I also added a layer of ice cubes and turned around. Throw the ice out." Among the various dragons, Silver Dragon is almost the cleanest one. He said that he had already cleaned it up, and Gretel believed it? The question is, can you ensure that it is cleaned now and that the patient will not vomit later? But this is no longer an issue that Gretel needs to consider. Vomiting can be a big or small matter. The most minor ones, such as motion sickness, will be fine after vomiting. The most severe ones, such as projectile vomiting, indicate intracranial hypertension. If you don't deal with it, you will die in a matter of minutes. Okay, let's go up, he pulled Cyrilla. Cyrilla snorted and remained silent, which was regarded as acquiescence. When she agreed, there was a crash outside, and the entire ice wall collapsed. A huge adult silver dragon stood on the platform at the door, stretching its neck and looking in. Shall I take you up? Cyrilla held Gretel's hand, and the dragon wings spread out behind her, taking him to fly onto her brother's back. Vaska changed direction, flapped his wings a few times, and steadily carried Gretel and the two to the top of the dragon's nest. There, on a flat rock as big as several football fields, 3 silver dragons occupied one side of each other, guarding a golden dragon lying on the ice and humming. Stay away from me, ugh, I'm so dizzy, ugh, don't talk to me, let me lie down for a while. The golden dragon's wings were widely spread, its body was bent forward, its long neck was almost flat on the ground, and it lay on the ground in a posture between a hen squatting and a farmer squatting. There was a huge ice basin in front of him, big enough for 7 or 8 people to take a bath. Its head was resting on the edge of the ice basin. There was a silver dragon guarding the patient next to him. If the patient vomited twice, the silver dragon would cast a cleansing spell to clean all the dirt to the bottom of the ice basin and seal it with a layer of ice. He would spit out 2 more mouths and deal with it again. Okay, if there is no flush toilet, is this how to clean it? It's quite effective. Gretel rolled his eyes silently, not knowing how to complain for a moment. Vaska has already taken him to fly to the golden dragon. That's him. After being injured a few days ago, he's been dizzy all the time. No matter how he's treated, it doesn't work, give him a look. That's not the way you talk about your medical history, brother. If it were a family member of a patient, it wouldn't matter if he said so. He had heard all the weird medical histories, but, the dragon clan, especially the silver dragons, seemed to be part-time healers. May I have your name? Greet circled around and stood in front of the golden dragon, trying to keep a distance that would not get him but allow him to see clearly, and asked. Jinlong raised his eyelids slightly and found that he could see the other person clearly without twisting his eyes. He felt a little better about Gretel and answered with a hum. Vargas Golden Clawed Kimalu. Age. 174 years old. A 174-year-old adult dragon is considered quite senior, almost close to the prime of life, of course, if the dragons who are more diligent and hard-working have already advanced to the prime of life at this age. Gretel quickly glanced at the golden dragon in front of him. Based on his size, he really couldn't tell what stage he was in. Of course, this is not too important. In short, it only matters that the opponent is in a strong stage. How long have you been dizzy? Half a month. What happened before you felt dizzy? He was hit on the head during the battle. Several voices rushed to answer. The 4 silver dragons who sent Vargas over spoke together, their voices rumbling like deep thunder rolling on the top of the dragon's nest. The golden dragon Vargas groaned and immediately plunged his head into the ice basin. Vomit. It seems that he is quite dizzy. With quick eyes and quick hands, Greed put a layer of bubbles on himself, then a layer of wind barriers, and then a layer of particularly large bubbles. Looking left and right, all kinds of lights were shining around the silver dragons. It was obvious that every dragon was prepared for this situation. How was the beating? How were the injuries? Did the head bleed? Did the eyes, nostrils, and ear holes bleed? Gretel asked a lot of questions. Head trauma causes dizziness and vomiting, which are the most dangerous. The most critical situation that Gretel could think of was cerebral hemorrhage, which pressed on some important part. The beating was very fierce. Vargas is so brave. The golden dragon is always at the front. When fighting side by side, the golden dragon assumes more responsibility as a warrior, while the silver dragon often stands behind the golden dragon and assumes the responsibility of a spellcaster. Therefore, the enemy's claws, tails, and various attacks fall more often on Vargas. It must be bleeding. There are several cuts on the head, and the whole head is covered in blood. I'm telling you, that's the enemy's blood. The enemy's. Vargas roared loudly. I don't know where the vibration occurred during the roar. After shouting, he plunged into the ice basin again. Ugh. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1478. Planet Watcher Leader adds 4 updates. Hey, skin trauma and intracranial injury are not the same thing. The beating was bloody, and there was a gash on the scalp, which was not the same thing as bleeding on the brain. Gretel really wanted to pick up these noisy silver dragons, with their tails up and their heads down, and shake them one by one until their spines rattled. Yelling for a long time affects the patient's mood and state, and gives invalid information. Don't say anything. Let the patient answer for himself. Greet shouted loudly, and at the same time tried his best to come out with a bit of coercion. However, his coercion is a modified version of Longway. In front of a group of dragons, it is completely like dancing a sword in front of Guangong, and it has no effect at all. However, when Sarah saw him like this, she shouted. Don't say anything. Let Greet ask. The silver dragon girl's voice was clear and high-pitched, and it spread for miles, rippling far away among the clouds in the mountains. Several silver dragons froze and shut up, but Vargas said ouch. Please lower your voice, I feel dizzy. Gretel quickly smiled at Cyrilla and made a SHH gesture. Then, he turned around and asked Mr. Jin Long. How did you feel after being beaten? It hurts, it feels like the whole thing has been crushed. Do you have a headache? Does it hurt inside or outside? How can I take care of this? I'm fighting. I felt pain after the fight and couldn't get up. Fortunately, the treatment kept up. Greet asked carefully from beginning to end, but still didn't get the key information. Jin Long did suffer serious injuries during the battle, but in his excited state, he didn't feel any particular headache. There was indeed blood on his eyes, nostrils, and ears, but whether it was his own blood or someone else's, Vargas himself couldn't tell. After the treatment, did you experience blurred vision? Have you ever had black eyes? Are you wobbly and unable to stand up, unable to fly, or unable to walk in a straight line? Of course, I lost so much blood. My right wing is broken, and both back legs are injured. I definitely can't stand up or fly. But these symptoms were almost all wiped away with one massive dose of treatment. Broken and twisted bones are straightened and reunited. The torn muscles and skin reattach themselves, and new scales grow under the broken scales. Strength restored, pain gone, vision clear. I'm just dizzy. The golden dragon Vargas lay on the edge of the ice basin, said a few words, closed his eyes for a while, said a few words, and closed his eyes again. I feel dizzy when walking, and I feel dizzy when flying. The only way to avoid dizziness is to lie down like this. Oh, shaking your head won't work. He took a hissing breath and lay down again. But I'm a soldier. I can't walk or fly. How can I go to the battlefield? Yeah. He faints as soon as he flies up. I've seen all the healers, and I've used all the healing spells that can be used. It's just not good. There were unlucky guys like him in the past. They were beaten on the head, and everyone was dizzy. But most of them recovered, and if not, they recovered even after lying down for a few days. He just couldn't do it. The silver dragons all expressed their love for Vargas. Rumble, 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 high-frequency vibrations and low-frequency vibrations bombarded together, and Gretel felt like his head was buzzing. Before he could protest, Cyrilla had already exploded. What's the noise? What's the noise? Let's all go. Just leave one behind. Gretel is almost to death from the noise. While shouting, he had already transformed back into his silver dragon form, stomping his feet, flapping his wings, and trying his best to chase away people. The four silver dragons avoided each other laughingly. Oh, little princess Yue went crazy. The little princess has grown up and has a boy to protect. Let's go, the female dragon who protects the nest is the most vicious, don't mess with her. Three slender silver figures were connected in a line, flying high into the deep blue waves. From a distance, I heard them discussing. Is it okay for little Princess Yue to have a boy? Hard to say. He is a healer, yes, but he has never healed a dragon. Oh, not counting Jerson from the Lava Dragon clan. Poor Jerson, he has been overseas for a long time, so he can't even meet a healer. Forget it, let him try it. Anyway, Varghese has already been treated for one round, and he is not bad at this one, healing skills and other things. Even if the treatment cannot be cured, it will not be worse, right? What? You? He actually didn't believe Greed. Forget it if you don't believe it, it's still behind your back. No, this is almost equivalent to saying bad things about Gretel in front of you. Cyrilla was so angry that she stamped her feet, flapped her dragon wings, and wanted to rush after them. As soon as his wings flapped, Varghese ducked subconsciously, followed by another ouch. Don't move, I'm dizzy. Greed felt deep sympathy for him. As for dizziness, it doesn't look as painful as pain, nor is it as torturous as other diseases, but who really knows who is suffering from it? Gretel had a colleague in her previous life, the former head nurse of the emergency department. She was very capable and very capable. When she came to the emergency department for emergency treatment, her loud voice filled the entire emergency room. Unfortunately, I later contracted Meniere's disease. When it comes on, it's a life worse than death. A very capable person can only lie motionless. I couldn't stand up, open my eyes, or turn my head. Even if I want to get out of bed to go to the bathroom or eat a few mouthfuls of food, I will feel dizzy, nauseous, want to vomit, and break out in cold sweats. Go to the hospital? Non-existent. Walk a few steps, go out and get in the car, get off the car and enter the hospital, queue up to register and sit in the clinic. Every step is torture that is worse than death. There is absolutely no other way but to push through. How does it feel when you faint? How do you feel? I just feel nauseous, want to vomit, vomit, don't let me remember, I want to vomit again. Sure enough, that's how it goes when talking to lay people. In fact, Greed himself was not much better when he started studying medicine in his previous life. At that time, in class, when the teacher said, it is necessary to distinguish between dizziness and vertigo. These two conditions are different, the students started to quarrel. What's the difference? Aren't they all dizzy? The book says that dizziness is top-heavy and unsteady gait. That is no different from vertigo. That's right. Even if we memorize it, if the patient can't understand it or answer it, it's still in vain for us to ask. Quiet, the teacher banged on the table. At this time, you can see the difference between experienced medical workers and inexperienced students. The teacher starts the class very concisely. You should remember 2 points. The first point is that you will feel dizzy if you move, but if you don't move, it is dizziness. If you feel dizzy no matter if you move or not, it is dizziness. Secondly, if the patient lies still but still feels weightless, moving, or even spiraling, it is dizziness. If the patient feels weak, has night sweats, or cannot stand, it is dizziness. Remember, I told you so earlier. The students replied sparsely. Greet has remembered the standard of consultation all his life, until he came to another world. According to the standard, Golden Dragon Varghese would shake his head twice or shake once, and he would feel like the world was spinning. When he fainted, even if he lay still, he felt like he was floating, spinning, and rolling. This is dizziness, not dizziness. By the way, non-systemic vertigo can also be ruled out, which means eye diseases, cardiovascular system diseases, endocrine and metabolic diseases, poisoning, infection, anemia and other causes can all be ruled out. Of course, there are a variety of causes of systemic vertigo. Greet followed the method of identifying dizziness and continued to ask. How long will it take you to faint? How long? I fainted from the time I was injured. You don't get dizzy when you lie down quietly, but you only get dizzy when you walk or fly, Greet tried hard to explain to him. You're not dizzy now, are you? I'm also dizzy. Golden Dragon Varghese replied as softly and slowly as possible. The upper and lower jaws opened slightly, making a slight sound of airflow, obviously because they were afraid of shaking their heads. You'll get dizzy if you speak too loudly, you'll get dizzy if someone yells next to you, you'll get dizzy if the wind is too loud, you'll get dizzy if you eat something, and you'll get dizzy if you chew something that makes it click. The symptoms are a bit complicated. Greet smiled reassuringly at him, followed his answer, and asked the next question. Then if you shake your head now, how long will you faint? I'll just faint for a while, but I want to fly. I want to fight. As soon as I start flying, I'll faint. Speaking of the excitement, the outer auricle, which was covered with skin and was stretched open by the thorns, couldn't help but flap a little, and then fell down with an ouch. Gretel silently counted 5 breaths and immediately spoke. Are you dizzy now? I'm dizzy now. Are you still dizzy? Still dizzy. What now? Gretel counted 12 breaths and asked again. This time, he got a different answer. I'm not dizzy anymore. Varghese replied weakly. Gretel breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the duration was short, only about half a minute. Then it's probably not central vertigo, that is, it's not vertigo caused by central lesions. What kind of cerebral hemorrhage is not cured? Cerebral edema, cerebral herniation, brain tumor, cervical spondylosis, vertebral basilar artery insufficiency, temporal lobe epilepsy. None. After eliminating the most terrifying ones with the worst consequences, we can slowly investigate and treat them slowly. Anyway, the cause of peripheral vertigo is a problem with the vestibular receptors. The wave of vestibular receptors is basically not fatal or urgent. There are many self-limiting diseases that can be cured by self-care. By the way, how do you hear sounds? Is your hearing loss? There's a buzzing in my ears, it's a bit tinnitus, no, it's quite severe, don't talk to me, I feel uncomfortable again. Why doesn't it feel right? The symptoms on both sides don't match up. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1479. Can Varghese be cured? In the dragon's nest below, the consultation work is proceeding in an orderly manner. In the sky, on the real Dragon Island, there were also several giant dragons that had been withdrawn from the front line. They gathered together and whispered. Even Elder Batista showed him, Elder Batista is our best healer. Isn't this already cured? When Varghese withdrew, he was seriously injured. His skull was cracked and his wings were half torn off. Now he's just dizzy. What does it have to do with being dizzy? In the past, for situations like his, most people would rest for a month or 3 months. After enough rest, they would recover naturally. That was a blow to the brain. What's wrong with being dizzy? But he's fainted and hasn't recovered yet. How long has Varghese worked hard, just hoping that this wave will make him a legend? Let him rest for a few months. All the previous efforts will be in vain. But we have cured everything we can. After Elder Batista treated him, he even sorted out all the energy in his body to make sure there was no confusion or tangle. So why is he still fainting? Have no idea. Is it okay to leave it to that little guy? Vasca recommended him, and Diamond also said that this kid is good, but after all he is still a little guy. Can he be able to do something about a disease that even the elders cannot cure? Who knows? It can't be worse anyway, right? Ah, Elder. A huge silver dragon, more than half the size of the dragons present, slowly walked over. The pure silver scales are somewhat transparent under the skylight, and there is a faint iridescent light flowing around them. This is exactly what happens to an extremely old silver dragon that has been on the road to legend for a long time. What are you talking about? What happened to Varghese? Well, Vasca recommended a new human healer. Varghese said that he wouldn't be able to go to the battlefield lying down like this anyway, so he might as well go over and give it a try. Oh? That human healer? What's going on? We don't know the specifics. Vasca just said that he cured some diseases that Vasca himself didn't cure. Interesting. Elder Batista groaned. After a moment, he shrank completely and turned into a gray-haired old elf, looking down. While I'm fine, I'll go take a look. Gretel didn't know that there was a senior healer from the dragon clan who wanted to come over and see him. He stood in front of Varghese, turning his hands behind his back, turning around, over and over again. What is the condition of this patient? The duration of each vertigo is very short, no more than 1 minute, and the probability of otolithiasis is higher. However, otolithiasis generally does not cause hearing problems. Varghese has obvious symptoms of tinnitus and auditory hallucinations, which is not consistent with this. There is a history of head trauma before. To be honest, many head traumas can cause vertigo, including neck trauma, central nervous system trauma, peripheral vestibular injury, etc. However, Varghese himself could not explain the specific location of the injury, and he was even less clear about the treatment process. Alas, it would be great if there were a complete set of medical records, examination reports, and treatment processes. With no medical records and no reports, Greed had to find another way. In fact, if you have had a fracture before and it has healed quickly recently, you can see the signs on the images. So, take an X-ray of him. Or maybe just do a CT scan. Waska, Waska, Gretel stood on tiptoes and waved to Cyrilla's brother. Do you have any legendary equipment? Borrow one for use. Why do you think I have it? Vasca's first reaction was to subconsciously cover her pockets. The second reaction was to take a few steps back and stare at Greed with vigilant eyes. Legendary equipment. I'm not legendary yet. Why do you think I have legendary equipment? Even if I do, I can't borrow it from you. Is it difficult to get legendary equipment? Gretel looked at him doubtfully, and then at Cyrilla. Are legendary gear rare? Is it difficult to get it? He, Cyrilla, Idion, and Ash Moonsong all have a few on hand. If it weren't for the fear that the golden dragon would burst out and grab the equipment, he and Cyrilla together wouldn't be able to defeat him, so that's why he didn't borrow it from Vasca. The treasures of the dragon clan cannot fall into the eyes of others casually, let alone fall into the hands of others casually. Forget it if you don't want to borrow it, Gretel shrugged. Turn around and look at his girlfriend. Cyrilla, please help me run over and ask Servilia to come over. I need her help with the checkup. Okay. Leave it to me. Cyrilla happily spread her wings and flew up, grinning at her brother and making a face. She glided down from the top of the dragon's nest, and soon returned with a maple tree with a bright red crown. I'm coming. Servilia has long been accustomed to being invited here and there. As soon as they reached the top of the dragon's lair, they followed Greet's instructions and took root near Vargas. Greet looked at the height of the golden dragon, then looked at Servilia, and flew up to compare. Then the voice was raised. Sister Servilia, grow taller. Grow taller. Grow taller. How tall do you want me to be? Servilia complained softly. Greet smiled and said, look at his head, it must be at least as tall as his head and half of his neck, right? Otherwise it won't be accurate in the photo. Please, please, let them give you gifts later. The stone on the top of the dragon's nest is flat and hard, with no gaps. The wind is strong and cold, which is not the environment that the maple tree likes. But the legendary ancient tree didn't care too much about this. Since Greet asked her to, she tried her best to lift the trunk and spread the branches and leaves. Is it okay? That's probably enough. Sister Servilia, please stay in this state and don't move. I'll go communicate with the patient. Greet deployed the dragon flying technique and flew towards Vargas again. A legendary ancient tree spread out at close range. Both the golden dragon Vargas and the silver dragon Vasca stared at her with caution. Gretel flew in front of Vargas, spread out a piece of light and shadow on his hand, and smiled at him. Come, let's do an examination. Can you raise your head now? Keep your head and neck in a straight line as much as possible, and shrink your body a little. Then Vasca, you make him a huge floating saucer, and let the floating saucer rotate slowly and uniformly. He gestured, the light and shadow spread out, and the 3 dragon heads and 6 eyeballs were all staring at the light and shadow. Vasca was the first to retort. You want such a big floating saucer? One that can levitate his whole body? Are you kidding? Can't you do it? Gretel turned to stare at him. It doesn't matter if you don't need a floating saucer. You can just float it and make a circle slowly and evenly. It must be slow, it must be even, and it must be a circle based on a certain center line. For a silver dragon, levitation should be instinctive, right? But he's so big, Vasca said angrily. We levitate ourselves, and levitating others are 2 different things. What's more, when we levitate, we have to spin. I can't either. Vargas interjected weakly. I can't keep my head upright now, I will feel dizzy, and if you want me to keep my head upright and my body as small as possible, I will shake. If I shake, I will become even more dizzy. But if you don't shrink it, the circle will be too big. The larger the circle, the more inaccurate the measurement will be, Gretel frowned. You can't necessarily stand still and let Servilia and I stand face to face, with your head as the center and revolve around you, right? It's not impossible, but I can't control it by myself, it depends on how well Sarah and I can cooperate. Sarah, come and try. Gretel had a terrible headache. Speaking of which, when he had a CT scan in his previous life, he never had to consider whether the CT machine could do it. The left and right CT machines are all made according to human size. A 300-pound fat man or a newborn baby can be put inside and rotate around. But the size of this golden dragon is too outrageous. The head alone is 3 to 4 meters long. The head and neck are more than 20 meters long. The body length including the tail is dozens of meters long. Even if the magical light field of the legendary ancient tree is transmitted from dozens of meters away, it will attenuate to the point of giving a headache. If you do a CT scan, the results will definitely be blurry. You must get Servilia as close to the golden dragon as possible. In order to keep the data accurate, Vargas cannot be made to shrink a few times, or simply turn into a human form. Where can I go to customize a CT machine that can perform CT scans on giant dragons? There is a light source, but it is too difficult to rotate. Cyrilla muttered. However, for the convenience of Gretel's treatment, he rolled up his sleeves and stood opposite the golden dragon's head with his brother. Greet flew above them, casting a perfect circle of light and shadow, measuring and shouting. Cyrilla, move to the left. Move to the left. One step back. One more step. Look at the circle I drew. Very good. I'm counting 1, 2, 3. Start moving around the circle. 3, 2, 1. Vaska, slow down. Slow down more. Cyrilla's crooked. I tried this back and forth 7 or 8 times, but every time it was either Vaska or Sarare who had a problem, or both of them had a problem together. Huasca wanted to endure it a little longer, but Cyrilla was already frustrated and fell down. I quit. I'm going to find Daddy. With Daddy here, I can definitely spin Varghese. Haha, little guys, what are you doing? In the distant clouds, a soft laughter suddenly sounded. Vaska turned his head and jumped up instantly. Elder. With the elders coming forward, the next thing will be much smoother. Gretel explained his thoughts in a few words, and then took out the paper and showed it to Elder Yinlong. Elder Batista smiled slightly and nodded. It's not difficult. Little guy, stand over there. Girl from the ancient tree over there, stand still. Varghese raises his head, okay. For the legendary silver dragon, the precise control of two beings suspended at the same time and rotating simultaneously is not a problem at all. Gretel only felt a warmth all over her body, and she was already floating, fluttering, and at an extremely slow speed. She and Servilia began to rotate around the golden dragon's head. He quickly activated detection magic and connected the signal to the mobile tower spirit, which in turn connected to the oak staff. After a full circle, the high-precision scan CT image was shot out from the oak tree crown and unfolded in front of everyone. I probably know why Varghese fainted, or, I at least found one of the causes. Greet squinted his eyes, looked at the CT images carefully, and made a conclusion with confidence. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1480. Planet Watcher 10,000 rewards added 5 updates. Gretel is looking at the CT images, so are Vaska and Cyrilla, and so is Batista, the Silver Dragon Elder. The difference is that Vaska can't understand CT anyway, so he is just a layman watching the fun. Cyrilla saw it very carefully. Under the dragon's scales and skin, the bones of the golden dragon turned out to be like this. Well, you should look at it carefully and remember it carefully. Sure enough, the golden dragon's skull looked so thick and hard that it couldn't be smashed. When fighting in the future, remember not to hit them directly on the head. However, the bones on the side look lighter and thinner. When fighting, you can pick up your tail and slap them from the side. But Elder Batista watched most carefully. While watching, simulate it in your mind. Well, the idea of this detection seems quite simple, but it is not easy to calculate quickly and well. At the very least, with the several calculation methods he simulated, it was impossible for the little guy to calculate numbers at the same time or even construct a three-dimensional image. And if you can't construct a three-dimensional image, you have to rely on calculations one by one. As I get older, I still need to chat more with young people in order to learn more new things. The little princess of the Liu Guang Shining family, the little guy brought back this time, is really interesting. Well, tell me, what's going on with Varghese? He turned to Greet with a smile. Why does he still feel dizzy even though he's been cured? Gretel didn't recognize the old elf who suddenly appeared. Oh, it should be the old dragon. But judging from the respectful attitude of several dragons around him, judging from the way he lifts his hands, Even judging from Servilia's hanging leaves and rare well-behaved attitude, he should be an amazing strong man. Therefore, Gretel was respectful, smiling and waving a light and shadow. On the CT image of the oak stick unfolded, each line is carefully marked. You see, Varghese's previous injuries, although healed, still left traces on the bones. Here, here, here. He outlined lines of white light on the CT image. Look, the bones here have obvious signs of thickening. This is a sign of callus formation and mature bone plate. The bone plate needs to be further reshaped before it can become a normal bone, so it can be seen in the image very clear. Yeah, yes. Elder Batista stroked his beard and nodded repeatedly. There is a big difference between the image that is observed when mental power penetrates it, and the image that is scanned and analyzed by magic and observed by the naked eye. Mental power can touch it, but the bones here are relatively weak and cannot be touched or subjected to force. However, what the spiritual force feels is more the gathering and dispersion of energy rather than the physical entity. It's interesting to see the abnormal thickening of the fractured end like this spell. It is obvious that the energy is enriched, but it is still different from normal bones. It is very clear when you look at it. Little guy, keep talking. What next? Then, we will follow the traces of broken bones to see what went wrong, which may have caused his tinnitus and dizziness. Greet spoke confidently. Here, here, and here have all healed again, and there is no hematoma or congestion in the nearby brain tissue. It should have nothing to do with his dizziness. It's probably an old injury here, so it doesn't matter. Only here, the top has healed, but there is a small crack below. And this crack is connected to the inside of the ear. If there is a crack, it can easily cause tinnitus and hearing abnormalities. Therefore, I highly suspect that Varghese's dizziness is related to the bone fracture here. Well. The old silver dragon narrowed his eyes, looked at the image marked by Gretel carefully, and then looked back. The great spiritual power was released, like spring breeze, like drizzle, moistening things silently, and penetrated into Varghese's skull. Here, here, here. To be honest, it is really difficult to take care of such small details when the healing power is spread out all at once. Especially when the injury is serious, the healing power washes back and forth, obvious injuries can be taken care of, and less obvious injuries. I can only rely on my body's instinct to grow it on its own. Sometimes, my instincts are a little bit off, and the growth is crooked, or it is too late to grow, so I have to suffer for a few more months. It is not a problem to be unlucky all the time. The Dragon Clan has a very powerful power of self-healing. As long as it lasts a few months, or at most a year and a half, a minor injury like this will heal anyway. What, you said it hasn't grown yet? Go to sleep. Go to sleep. Eat a big meal, and then sleep for several years, more than 10 years, and there is no injury that cannot be healed. As for the cracked bones here, which will affect hearing, if you think about it carefully, it is indeed possible. Going one step further, bad ears cause dizziness. Although old Silver Dragon doesn't quite understand the reason, his rich treatment experience and combat experience are enough to support him in making such a judgment. The young man is right. Well, what you said makes sense. Elder Batista nodded with a smile. Then what? How to treat it? That. The bone near the ear is called the temporal bone in humans. Specifically, the small piece pointed out by Greet should be called the top of the superior semicircular canal. The dizziness caused by bone cracks or defects in this bone has a proper medical name, superior semicircular canal cleft syndrome. It is mostly caused by head trauma. Gretel has even heard rumors in the world that a master of internal martial arts slaps a person on the head, accurately cracking the top of the upper semicircular canal. After the slap, the unlucky man's ears were buzzing and sometimes howling. He could often hear his loud chewing, pounding heartbeat, and gurgling blood. He even thought he heard ants crawling above his head. Sound. Nervous, unable to sleep at night. In less than half a month, I went from suspecting that I was injured to suspecting that I was crazy. It is said that after about half a year, he really went crazy. What? You said he hit you? Has the injury been examined? The bone fracture at the top of the superior semicircular canal can only be detected with a high-resolution CT scan. At that time, that is, at the time when Greed heard the rumors, there was no such thing in the whole of China. Even the official definition of this disease happened long after Greed started working. Gretel really didn't know what name this bone should be called if it was placed on the dragon family, or whether it even had a name. But the principle is the same: bone fractures, dizziness, tinnitus, abnormal hearing, and loud noises from the side will make Varghese feel dizzy. There is a high probability that the bone has not grown properly since he was hit on the head before. To put it bluntly, there is no harm in healing a cracked bone. If it is a past life, treatment of superior semicircular canal roof cleft syndrome requires surgical filling of the superior semicircular canal or sealing of the bone defect. But here, just give a treatment to guide this bone to grow. By the way, the treatment should be gentle as possible. This bone is very thin and very porous. If it grows too densely, it will also affect hearing. So, he made a please gesture. Please, please, please take action. Only your old strength can guide it to heal accurately. If you ask me to throw healing spells, to a large extent, the result will be a hard, smooth, dense bone. The old silver dragon shook his head with a smile, raised his right index finger, and tapped Greed from the air. With a flick of his finger, a soft white light fell on Varghese's head, penetrating in silently. Huh. Soon, Varghese raised his head in surprise. Unfortunately, this surprise only lasted for a moment. As soon as he raised his head, he whined again and fell down. He closed his eyes tightly and frowned tightly. What's wrong? What's wrong? Sarara couldn't wait to jump over and ask. Varghese closed his eyes and endured it for about a minute, then took a long breath and answered weakly. Still dizzy. Oh, little guy, your guess seems not quite right. Elder Batista turned to Greed with a smile. He didn't mean to embarrass Gretel. In fact, he was very optimistic about this little guy. It's just that it seems interesting to watch the little guy being busy every once in a while, right? Maybe I guessed wrong. Greed also smiled back at him. He walked up confidently, walked around to the left front of Varghese, and patted him with the hand of the mage. Hey, are you still ringing in your ears? It seems like there really isn't any more. Let me test your hearing. The left ear and the right ear each emit a set of sounds. Listen and see if the sounds are the same loudness. Gretel calmly took out a tuning fork and a set of small slings. He set up a tuning fork 5 meters away from Varghese's left ear, set up a catapult outside the tuning fork, pulled the spring, and let the special projectile hit the tuning fork, repeating this over and over again. Then he walked around 5 meters away from Varghese's right ear, and repeated the same procedure, making the tuning fork sound 3 times. Then he asked, which side is louder? It seems, almost. That'll do. Greed put away the tuning fork, turned around, and spread his hands to the old man. The hearing has been repaired, and there is no tinnitus or auditory hallucinations, which means that the problem has been solved. As for whether he still feels dizzy, it means there are other problems, and treatment must continue. Any more question? Elder Batista raised his eyebrows. While asking, he secretly moved his fingers, and the invisible healing power once again passed through Varghese's body. Still can't find any problem. I can't say for sure yet. Greed had some guesses, but he wasn't sure, and he couldn't give a straight answer. After thinking for a while, he activated his flying technique and hid behind Cyrilla. I have a few more experiments to do. Vaska, you keep an eye on him for me while I go down to find something. Whatever you want, I'll find it. Vaska took care of everything. This is my dragon's nest. It's much easier for me to find things than it is for you. Then. Greet glanced at Vargas quickly. With a hook of his fingers, a long gust of wind sent his words to his brother-in-law's ears. Find me some lizards. Big or small. Warcraft is better, pseudo-dragon is best, of course, I want to kill the ones you don't feel bad about. What? You're going to use a lizard to impersonate me? Vargas jumped up with a cry. Just as he jumped up, he suddenly fell down again. Even so, it didn't stop him from nagging. I'm a dragon, not a lizard, using a lizard to study me, is too much. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1481. No matter how the golden dragon Vargas jumps, sprays, or wails. No matter how much my brother-in-law looks sideways at Greed. No matter how Sarah and Elder Batista look sideways. Gretel still got what he wanted. There were 5 ordinary lizards, 2 ice lizards, 2 alligators. Gretel strongly suspected that they were caught to watch his jokes, and 2 pseudo-dragons of different types. The smallest one is only as long as his forearm. The largest one, Gretel, looks at the 2 pseudo-dragons. They are longer than Apia's deer form. Sir, please tell us what you want to do. The cloud giant Rum and his teammates worked in pairs. They held the 2 pseudo-dragons and brought them to Gretel. They spun them around and carried them out again. Which one you want, and what you want to do with it, wait until we are ready, then you can do it? Gretel. No, how low your evaluation of my hands-on ability is. I am also a level 15 magician after all. With all the constant spells and magic equipment on my body, 2 mere pseudo-dragons still can't hurt me. You don't have to worry about me being beaten to death or injured by it. Even so, Gretel had no intention of arguing with them. He sat down in the laboratory, adjusted the microscope, prepared various anatomy equipment, and gave instructions. Bring me a regular lizard. Anyone will do. He killed the lizard, took the body for a CT scan, then calmed down and began the dissection. The craniotomy was performed, the brain was removed, and the temporal bones were separated. Then, take the thinnest scalpel and repair it bit by bit, bit by bit, bit by bit. Eliminate the surrounding parts and build the general shape of the semicircular canals, ampulla, vestibule, and cochlea. Thank God, lizards have this set of organs. Unfortunately, he is studying medicine, not biology. He really doesn't know whether creatures other than humans have this set of hearing and position sensing organs. Even for the Dragon Clan, he had to look at the CT scan to confirm that this race had these things. As for the lizards, he was just guessing. He felt that the 2 races were relatively closely related. Oops. My hand slipped. This semicircular canal is too small. The semicircular canals of the adult inner ear have a span, height, and outer diameter of less than 1 centimeter, let alone a lizard as long as a forearm. My hands were really shaking, and the part I shouldn't have cut was cut off. Fortunately, I'm not afraid of cutting it off. Greed calmed down, placed the cut part next to the petri dish, and slowly scraped away the bone around the bony semicircular canals, revealing each bony semicircular canal. Next, the ampulla, vestibule, and cochlea are revealed bit by bit. Finally, the blade turned, pressed gently, and cut the vestibule in half. Vestibular utricle. Vestibular balloon. Let me see if there's anything I'm looking for. Great, there really is. Gretel let out a long breath, and his whole body relaxed. He had long suspected that Vargas had otolithiasis. the duration of vertigo, the cause of vertigo, ear trauma, and various other characteristics all supported this judgment. The only question is, do dragons have otoliths? In case he had made up his mind, he was ready to start treatment, trying every possible means to reset the patient's position. In the end, he found that creatures like dragons had no otoliths at all. He didn't say whether he was making a joke or not. He would shake the opponent's head back and forth, or even roll it repeatedly. Just shake, roll, or faint. Doesn't this add unnecessary pain to the patient? Now that it has been proven that lizards have otoliths, the next step is to prove whether lizards will suffer from otolithiasis. This is simple. Greet grabs a live lizard, fixes it, and summons a small snake. Go. Get into its ears. The little incorporeal snake pounced forward and submerged into the lizard's ears. Enter the external ear, enter the ear canal, enter the tympanic membrane, enter the vestibule. Did you see those tiny little things? Get it off. Yes, get it off. Then hold it in your mouth and go back, up, 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 turn. The otoliths, extremely fine calcium carbonate crystals attached to the vestibular utricle, were knocked down by Greet's command and brought into the semicircular canals by the snake. Gretel recalled the little snake, released the spell that immobilized the lizard, and held his chin up to observe. Hey, I'm staggering when I walk. Hey, I don't dare to leave. Hey, you climb up, climb up, climb up, you don't dare to climb anymore, you fall, don't dock your tail. There's no need to dock your tail either. Use. Judging from the lizard's movements, it is obvious that it has a problem with its sense of balance. As for this problem, is it directly related to otolithiasis? The relevant inspection methods were clearly written in the textbook of the previous life, and Greet could even memorize them directly. But the problem is, the patient sits on the examination bed, turns his head 45 degrees to one side, and quickly lies down with the help of the examiner. Hang your head on the edge of the bed at an angle of 20 degrees to the horizontal plane, and observe for 30 seconds or until the nystagmus disappears. Or the patient lies supine on the examination bed, quickly turns his head to the left or right with the help of the examiner, and observes for 1 minute or until the nystagmus stops. Greet picked up the lizard and looked left, right, up and down. The lizard stood motionless in his hand. He didn't know whether it was a stress reaction or simply pretending to be dead. Greet held the lizard's body with his left hand, and held the lizard's head with his right hand, twisted it to the left, and then broke it back. Oh, it doesn't seem possible. The cervical vertebrae will be broken. Lizards don't seem to have as flexible necks as humans. What should I do? Not much to do. Gretel didn't dare to take human life lightly, not even the life of a lizard. There is no other way, so I first do the experiments I can do, let the little snake crawl back in, find the needle in the haystack in the semicircular canal, and reset the otolith. When I let go of the lizard, I saw the lizard staggering a few times, then suddenly seemed to be stunned, looking around. After stopping for a while, he quickly crawled up, got into a special wooden tube in the corner of the experimental box, and disappeared. Conclusion: otolith repositioning, or removing the otolith out of the semicircular canal, can indeed help patients regain their sense of balance. As for the problem of the lizard's neck structure not being good enough to turn its head like a human being, Gretel walked out of the laboratory and came to the animal room with his hands behind his back. Ordinary lizards, ice lizards, alligators, and pseudo-dragons looked over one by one and finally gave the order. Rum. Exist. Do me a favor, get this pseudo-dragon out, and I'll do an experiment. The pseudo-dragon's neck has flexibility similar to that of a dragon's neck, and it can well complete the otolithiasis examination required by Greet. That night, Greet stood in front of elders Varghese and Batista, confident and talking. I think the reason why Varghese has been feeling dizzy is because a stone in his ear was knocked out of place. It just needs to be reset. What? There are stones in my ears. Are you kidding me? I'm not a sea fish. Before he finished speaking, Varghese started shouting urgently. If he hadn't been still unconscious, he would have jumped several meters high. Gretel flew out the mage's hand and slapped him hard. Shut up. I didn't let you speak. Sea fish, you still have kingfish. Speaking of which, the stones in the Totoaba's ears are indeed giant otoliths. Elder, I have done a series of experiments for this, and I can show it to you. Gretel simply turned to Elder Batista. There is nothing to say to the patient. The final treatment plan obviously needs the final decision of this elder. Then, let's do an inspection for Varghese to verify. Another poor common lizard was killed. The other poor ordinary lizards, ice lizards, and alligators were harassed by little snakes one by one, and walked in front of the elder one by one. In the end, the poor pseudo-dragon went through the whole process of being harassed by a small snake, walking around, having his neck opened by a giant to look at his eyes, and then being healed by a small snake. Elder Batista stroked his beard and thought. The little guy's thinking was completely different from his, but it did seem to make some sense. Interesting, interesting. How sure are you? Some confidence, but not much. Gretel pondered. To say that we are not sure, the main reason is that the physiological structure and pathological principles of dragons are different from humans. This thing affects the whole body with just one move. As long as there is a slight difference, the appearance of the disease may be thousands of miles away. It's okay, you can try it first. Elder Batista waved his hand decisively. Come, and check Varghese. Greed was dumbfounded. He looked at himself, and then at the golden dragon lying on his back, which was several times taller and more than 10 times as long as he was. Several giant force field hands flew out and compared with the golden dragon. Still not very reliable. It feels like it's easier to control if you try it yourself. But with the size of the golden dragon, do you want me to turn into a giant bigger than those cloud giants, and then take action myself? Greed struggled for a long time, and finally gritted his teeth, stamped his feet, and broke the jar. A gentleman's life is not different, he is good at things and fake things. Sister Servilia, please grow up a little bit. Grow up a little bit more. The silver dragon deployed its floating technique and held Varghese up, making his whole body soft and unbearable. The tree was raised to the extreme, like a giant tree with clouds hanging from the sky, spreading its branches to stabilize Varghese's head. Gretel flew out 4 large force field hands, pressed them on the golden dragon, and gave orders. Everyone, pay attention to my movements. As soon as I push down, you guys should cooperate and relax. 3, 2, 1. He hung himself in mid-air, threw out 2 secret eyes, and stared at the 2 eyes of the golden dragon respectively. With a command, the 2 secret eyes flew downwards along with the golden dragon, and the light screen trembled. Tisk, these eyeballs are shaking so much that they're going to be shaken. Seeing the symptoms he was waiting for, Greed finally breathed a sigh of relief and nodded to the old silver dragon. Elder Batista floated in the air with his hands behind his back, breathed a sigh of relief, and nodded. It seems that it is indeed what you said. Little guy, you guessed it right, let's start treating it. Half an hour later, the golden dragon Varghese jumped up. I'm not dizzy. I'm not dizzy at all. I'm fine, dear friend, how can I thank you? Then it depends on how the dragon clan calculates the treatment reward, Greed thought silently, and just when he was about to find someone to ask, he heard Elder Batista laugh and say, Little guy, you are very good. How about you, are you interested in following me up there to have a look? It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1482. Go up there? 2, that place in the sky. The place where legendary dragons, mature dragons, and senior adult dragons fight? The most mysterious place on Dragon Island? Gretel couldn't help but raise his head, showing a longing expression. His senior brother had never been to this place, and neither had his teacher. The teacher just said, "There is a big secret on Dragon Island." I was not able to get there back then. Sirara hasn't been there either, and she didn't even mention it. Probably, a young dragon, a dragon clan who has not yet reached adulthood, is not qualified to know. Among the records of the Magic Council, maybe he didn't bother to look through them. Anyway, he didn't read them. Moreover, judging from what the teacher said, even if someone has been there, there should be no written records left, or at least, there are no written records in the public library of the Parliament and the library of Thunderhorn. It would be great if you could go and have a look. See the scenery that you have never seen before, touch the existence that you have never touched before, even if you don't consider the benefits to the growth of the mage. Walking more and seeing more is not a time in vain. Only. Gretel turned his head subconsciously. Sarala has already jumped over, her eyes are shining, her body is slightly sideways, and half of her is ahead of him. Can I go too? Can I go too? Haha, the little girl of the Liuguang shining family elder Batista looked at her lovingly. What do you mean, He smiled, stroked his beard, squinted his eyes and smiled, but refused to say a word. Can. Sarala was a little anxious. Hey. Can I go? Little girl, your parents are Andre and Cynthia, right? Elder Batista recalled carefully. Did they take you up? In other words, did they tell you that there was such a place for you to try to fly upward? Woo. Sarala's beautiful and bright face turned from sunny to cloudy, and from cloudy to overcast. Elder Batista is still smiling. Little girl, that place is very dangerous. If you are not a strong enough warrior, it will be difficult for you to protect yourself there, let alone help. Your parents didn't tell you, it's probably because they think you are not strong enough. But. Sarara struggled to defend herself. Elder Batista raised a finger, shook it twice, and then pointed at Gretel. This little guy, although his healing skills are not very strong, he is very special. Take him up there to have a look and gain some insights. Even if you can't help him for the moment, it will be very beneficial to him in the future. But you. He sighed and shook his head. No need to go on, Greet also knows what the elder means. Sarala is not an extraordinary strong person. She has just entered adulthood and does not show any outstanding qualifications that deserve special training. Her own parents didn't let her go to the top, and outsiders couldn't do it for her. He can neither afford to protect her nor train her, nor can he be responsible for her safety. But. Sarara pouted, twisted, then twisted again, and poked Gretel. Hey, talk to me. Say something. Where you go, I will go too. I want to be with you. Greet looked troubled. He took a step aside and whispered. That place is very dangerous. I can't protect you. I myself need the protection of the elders. I will be careful. Sarala lowered her voice and replied hastily. In front of Elder Batista, in fact, no matter how low he is, even if he uses secret transmission, he can't hide it from others. This is just an attitude that we discuss privately. I don't need your protection. I will be very careful. Don't go where you are not allowed to go, and don't do what you are not allowed to do. I will definitely be obedient. Take me with you. Don't make trouble. Greet's face was full of black lines. You have never seen that place, how can you be sure that everything will be fine if you just stay there? That's where the battle is. Don't cause trouble for others. Woo. Sarala's face became increasingly gloomy and gloomy. Greet's eyes were gentle, staring at her wrinkled little face, but she never spoke. When it comes to Sarala's safety, This must not be willful. The place on Dragon Island is not the New World, the Great Forest, or Everlasting Island. It is an extremely dangerous place that clearly exceeds Cyrilla's ability. Before you can protect yourself and protect Cyrilla at the same time, no matter what, you can't let your beloved girl run around. Vaska had been watching her sister and Greet with fear. After waiting for a while, seeing that Gretel had no intention of letting go, he quietly breathed a sigh of relief. Thank God, the human magician that the girl likes is relatively determined. If he can't resist Cyrilla's tears, her coquettishness, crying, and threats, and if he relents and agrees to a request that is beyond his ability, then as an elder brother, he will have to reconsider. After weighing it, a male who cannot protect Cyrilla and may put her in danger is not qualified to be her partner. Even if we don't break them up, we still need to test them more and observe more, and we can't just agree to it right away. Of course, besides being satisfied, Vaska also felt a little regretful. My sister wanted to go to Sky Dragon City, but instead of making trouble with him as her elder brother, she only made trouble with Gretel. Alas, girls are getting older and have extramarital affairs. He, the older brother, is no longer the closest person to my sister. Brother Yinlong was caught in the dual emotions of relief and loss. The corners of his mouth turned up for a while, and curved down for a while, a bit like having a convulsion. If Greet saw it, he would probably do a head CT to see if there was any possibility of a stroke. When Elder Batista looked at the pair of little guys, he was filled with joy. Not bad, not bad. The young man has a good idea and knows it well. As for girls, it's not a bad thing to be a little willful, at least be obedient. Since he is obedient and can be managed, then he, an old man, might as well give him a chance. Little guy, will the little girl from the Liuguang Shining family be helpful to your treatment? This is. Greet turned his head sharply. I saw the old man stroking his beard and looking at him with a smile, with a rather cunning look in his eyes. But this expression disappeared briefly, and soon returned to his serious look, with a serious face. It's not a fun place up there, it's very dangerous. I'll take you up there to give you a long experience, but I'll also make you work. If you don't obey, can't do the work, or can't help, we can't have it. Cyrilla's eyes lit up, and she opened her mouth to speak hastily, but then she tightened her lips and looked at Gretel expectantly. Gretel's thoughts were racing, she took a deep breath and nodded to the elder. Cyrilla has been very helpful in my treatment work. Elder, I am a human and I don't know much about the dragon's body structure, details, and many situations. Cyrilla has taught me a lot. Then, my strength and magic power reserves are much weaker than those of the dragon clan. In the past, when treating patients, especially high-level patients or large groups of patients, I would point out the direction and Cyrilla would be responsible for the implementation. When he said something, Cyrilla nodded, and when he said something again, Cyrilla nodded again. He looked impatient, as if he wanted to shout. That's right, that's right. I am his assistant. First assistant. Take me. You're right to take me there. I can help. Gretel can't do it without me. Vaska's face turned dark. What, you don't understand the body structure of dragons? What, Cyrilla taught him a lot. What was taught? How was it taught? Boy, you'd better not let me know what you shouldn't have done by tricking Cyrilla. Cyrilla is young and ignorant, and I, as your elder brother, will not let you go. His heart surged for a moment, and he clenched his fists. He wished he could drag Gretel away and carry him to the dragon's lair, or carry him thousands of miles away and torture him severely. By the way, let's do detect lies a few more times. Elder Batista was very satisfied. With his age and strength, there is not much difference between protecting one child and protecting two children. Of course, there must be a justifiable reason for bringing children who are not old enough and whose strength level is not high enough. For example, Gretel is an excellent healer. Another example is that Gretel needs an assistant who is strong enough and has a good understanding of each other. Okay. Just pack up and get ready, then come up with me. Is 1 day enough for you? Or 2 days? As soon as possible. Greet bowed to the elder, pulled Sirara up, and ran out in a gust of wind. He ran out 2 steps, braked suddenly, and returned to the elder. Elder, would it be convenient to bring a few more people up? What? You see, I'm just a level 15 magician. I can only transform into an adult silver dragon for less than half an hour. I have 2 legendary level partners, a few half-step legends, and some close to legends. Partner. Elder Batista. Who is this? Who is this? A little guy at level 15, with 2 legendary companions by his side. Elder Batista turned to look at the tree next to him. The little guy calls out Sister Servilia. It seems that this legendary ancient tree is a legendary companion. There is another legend, and several half-step legends, near legends. Are they all dragons? Neither. The elder stopped and stared at Greet. Greet pursed her lips and sighed a little. Fine. Idion, Sister Uedge, Sister Servilia, Bernard, as well as Appa, Shiloh, Seagull Baka, I feel sorry for you, you have to wait longer on the ground this time. Next time, if I do a good job, achieve good results, and gain more trust from them, I will bring you up again. He packed up his laboratory, the Mage Tower Spirit, and the energy-draining device. Vargas was in front, and his brother-in-law was behind. Greet and Cyrilla deployed their flying skills and followed closely beside the elder. Try your best to go up, up, up. Fly over the dragon's nest, fly out of the clouds, and fly to the stars. Greet's eyes opened wider and wider, and finally, he couldn't help but sigh. Wow! Pia new fantasy book. The immortal wizard observes. As a wizard with the gift of immortality, the most important thing he lacks is time. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1483. Gretel had many speculations about that place above the clouds. For example, a huge floating mountain. It's like cutting off the top of a mountain, turning it upside down, with the flat surface facing up, and letting it float in the air. Then, various buildings were built on the surface of the floating mountain, and the mountain was even hollowed out and things built inside. For example, a huge cloud island suspended in the sky. Silver dragons are good at gathering clouds and solidifying clouds into islands, where they build nests, live, and hatch eggs. The cloud islands float in the wind and travel to every corner of the world. Another example is the corpse of a giant beast. Whales, giant turtles, even giant dragons, those giant beasts with extremely huge bodies that are said to be able to carry the entire world on their backs. Captured by the dragon clan, or voluntarily giving their bodies after death, they are used by the dragon clan to build fixed residences, or cities and fortresses built on the zenith. Gretel even felt that he would not be surprised if he saw a flying steam castle, a space station, or a space elevator. He has even been to flying cities like Dalaran, of course, in the game in his previous life. If the mysterious area on Dragon Island was just like that, Gretel felt that it did not exceed his imagination. But what did he see? Light, endless light, colorful light. The higher it flies, the stronger and more condensed the light becomes. Looking from a distance, it looks like a huge sphere with 5 colors inside, like petals, like whirlpools, constantly flowing and intertwining. And outside the sphere, there is an even larger light mask, stretching outwards as far as the eye can see. Looking far into the distance, the light shields seem to envelop the entire world, and seem to turn upward and upside down, blocking the cracks in the world. This is Dragon City? A dragon city made of light? How much energy does it take to condense into matter? Or, how powerful is it to live leisurely and comfortably in such an environment of pure energy? For the first time, Greed felt that maybe Sky Dragon City was not a place suitable for him to come, at least not right now. I haven't stepped into the legend yet, or even half stepped into the legend. It seems a little early to get here. Can he survive without the protection of the elders? Or, can he survive without the protective shield specially created for him? But now it's too late to regret. He flew upwards with Elder Batista, getting higher and higher. The airflow around me changed from violent to calm, but it did not enter the stratosphere from the troposphere, let alone enter the mesosphere. Instead, at some point, he rushed into a flowing river of light. Thin, gorgeous, intangible, and qualityless. Greed raised his head slightly and saw the old silver dragon in front of him. The pure silver dragon scales were reflected in 7 colors, constantly flowing and changing. Carefully reaching out his hand, the color of the palm, back of the hand, and nails were also covered with a layer of flowing light and shadow. Sometimes it's light green, sometimes light purple, and sometimes a thin layer of red, passing by suddenly and disappearing. Is this an aurora? Or is it the refraction of sunlight into the atmosphere and refraction in clouds? Or, is it a manifestation of magical power? Greed reached out and picked up 2 handfuls in the light and shadow, and then grabbed another handful. There was nothing in his fingers, and he picked up nothing. I expanded my mental power and tried to sense it, but still couldn't sense anything. While I was thinking, my whole body suddenly pulled up, as if being picked up by something, and rushed upward quickly. The flying technique that was originally launched was somewhat uncontrollable, swaying here and there, diagonally to the left, then diagonally to the right. Gretel. A somewhat panicked voice sounded not far away. Gretel turned his head and saw Sarah flapping her wings vigorously. The movements looked a bit messy, and the flight path was also shaky. Gretel was shocked. Cirella. How are you? You 2 little guys, don't be distracted and follow me from the front, Elder Batista turned his head and warned. It's your first time here, feel it carefully, it will be good for your future progress. With the elders as guarantee, there shouldn't be any danger, at least not to life. Gretel relaxed a little, raised his head, and looked around. They bathe in the river of light. Following the river, it rushes towards an endless sea of light. As I got closer, I discovered that there were countless thin rivers swaying on the edge of the sea of light, like the tentacles hanging from the bottom of a jellyfish. In some rivers, there are other giant dragons rising like them, in some rivers, birds are caught in them, and in some rivers, they are gently swaying. Wherever they go, meteors burning with fire silently rise. Falling apart. This is it the guidance beam on the space carrier? Or a laser defense network? Or, is it some weapon system that he doesn't understand? Greed looked around, but didn't see what was going on. He tried making a fireball, but it didn't move the river of light, the ice ray didn't move either, the electric ball seemed to have some effect, but it didn't seem to. Check out the magnetic lines. Throw a lightning bolt, let it circulate along a specific line, let the magnetic lines cut around it, and see if the light flow changes. Gretel carefully popped out a ball of lightning. The thin current circled around the finger, and the light flow around him suddenly boiled, setting off huge waves, and he was almost knocked out. Gretel struggled twice, and the river of light suddenly rolled up a huge wave and threw him onto the back of the old silver dragon. Observe, just observe, don't rush to do it. If you want to experiment, we can talk about it after we get up. Gretel calmed down. Before he could see why, he had already rushed forward and entered the sea of light. A thin, pale silver light quickly came up to them, wrapped them up, and swayed forward lightly. In a moment, a building made of rays of light appeared in front of them. Greet followed the old silver dragon into the hall and jumped twice curiously. The ground was very solid and could not be stepped on, so he would not be missed. He reached out and plucked it again, and his fingers sank into the ground without any hindrance, as if he were picking up a ball of colorful light. It had no weight, no temperature, and no touch. Looking left and right, the flowing colored light blocked the line of sight like a normal wall. There seemed to be dragons moving in the distance, but the palace was so deep, wide, and winding that it was hard to see clearly. Elder Batista raised his head and groaned. After a moment, 2 silver dragons flew over from the depths of the palace and looked at them in surprise. Cyrilla, Greet, why are you here too? Elder, these 2 little guys didn't cause you any trouble, did they? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1484. Why are you causing trouble? Cyrilla shouted with dissatisfaction. My brothers and sisters also came here, and I didn't hear what my parents said about them. Why was it my turn? I was in trouble. Why can't you wish us better? You look like you're going to get into trouble, Cynthia's clear voice struck her head. After smashing it, he lowered his head and bowed deeply to Elder Batista. Elder, the child is young and not sensible. Please bear with me if I do anything wrong. Greet pursed her lips hard from behind. Cyrilla's parents look like this, they are so familiar. The old doctors in the hospital have this attitude when their children come in for internship and greet the teachers and directors with their children. The children who follow behind me are often dissatisfied and angry. They feel that they are the boss and the second child. They feel that they are very great. He secretly tugged at Cyrilla, signaling her to shut up for the time being. The 2 people's eyes were darting back and forth. By the time Gretel calmed down Cyrilla, the conversation between Cyrilla's parents and elders had already reached the next stage. No, no, both children are fine. I came here just to open their eyes. Don't worry, as long as they don't wander around and follow me closely, they can stay wherever I tell them. I guarantee they'll be fine. Did you hear me? Another crisp shout rang out. This time, Cynthia simply turned half a circle, bypassed Elder Batista, and stood next to Cyrilla. Don't walk around. Don't run around. Follow the elder, or whoever the elder tells you to follow. You must follow. It's dangerous here. It's extremely dangerous. While lecturing, he stared at Cyrilla with stern eyes, and almost turned the eye knife into a chain, locking her daughter tightly to her body. In fact, if it weren't for the legendary dragon fighting place, it would be more dangerous than here, much more dangerous, so dangerous that something might happen to her daughter if she stayed under her wings. Cynthia really had such a plan. Okay, I understand. Although Cyrilla didn't dare to talk back, she replied with an impatient look on her face, grinding her toes back and forth on the ground. After rolling it twice, I seemed to find that when my toes were exerting force, the ripples of light and shadow on the ground were very interesting. I actually lowered my head and focused on playing on the floor. Gretel. Cynthia called Gretel anxiously and angrily. After he finished shouting, he seemed to feel something was wrong after thinking about it, so he softened his tone and said softly. Mage Nordmark. Just call me Greet. Greet was covered in white hair and sweat at her shout, and she quickly straightened her back. Don't worry, I will protect Cyrilla and watch over her to prevent her from going to dangerous places. As long as I am here, she will not be in any danger. It's good if you have this intention. Facing Gretel, Cynthia's attitude softened a lot after saying that. He patted his daughter on the shoulder and straightened her hair that fell to her shoulders. Cyrilla, remember, if you run around, Gretel will get in trouble. He is no better than you. He can only last half an hour when he becomes a silver dragon. If he is injured, the time will be even shorter. For your sake and his sake, be obedient, you know? I know the way. Sirrah replied weakly. Cynthia stared at her daughter lovingly, shook her head, and smiled at Gretel. Thank you for your hard work, Gretel. Cyrilla has been pampered by us since she was a child, and she is somewhat willful. If she does anything dangerous, you must hold her back and tell me later, and I will scold her. Greet's eyes were crooked, and he nodded to her with a smile. Oh, mother-in-law, mother-in-law. The words were full of motherly love, but soft yet hard at the same time. She has been pampered by us since childhood, this girl is pampered by us and has a backing. Somewhat willful, the vaccine has been taken. If you are angry about this again, you are wrong. She did something dangerous, you must hold her back, just hold her back, it does not mean that you can do other things. Tell me later and I will scold her, you are not allowed to scold her. Greet nodded to Cynthia sincerely, his eyes slightly tilted, looking past her not far away. Cyrilla's father is talking to Elder Batista, please sincerely ask. While talking, the corner of his eye still shrouded Cyrilla from time to time. It's so good to have such a pair of parents who love and support me unconditionally. If my mother were here, when the in-laws met, she would smile tenderly and say softly, ah, Xiaozhou is spoiled by me. He doesn't know how to do any housework. I also really want to be more filial and filial to my mother, let her live in the new house I bought, so that she doesn't have to worry about tomorrow's income, and let her enjoy a carefree old age. If you want to take a walk, take a walk. If you want to dance square dance, dance a square dance. If you want to travel, just go traveling. Unfortunately it was too late. I had just bought a house and my career had just entered a stable period. I could spare a little time to spend more time with her, but it was already too late. Now that I think about it, the only advantage of her mother walking in front of her is that she has traveled through time, so she won't be sad. His eyes moved slowly, from Cyrilla's mother to her father, and then from her father back to her mother. Seriously, look into Cynthia's eyes and assure her. Don't worry, Cyrilla is very good. She has always helped me a lot. She has never been willful in major matters, and she has never delayed anything. Don't worry, I will definitely protect her. Thousands of assurances made Cynthia's eyes soften. Obviously, the two legendary silver dragons are here to shoulder very important tasks and have no time to stay. Andre ended his conversation with Elder Batista, and then came over to chat with Greet and Sarah for a few words. Then they both transformed back into the silver dragon form and soared into the sky without looking back. There was only one angry instruction left, which echoed repeatedly in the deep corridor and lingered endlessly. Vaska, take care of your sister, let me know if she is in any danger, I will skin you. Vaska, what happened to me? Haha, let's go quickly, we're waiting over there watching the legendary silver dragon couple go away. Elder Batista turned back and greeted Greet and the others. In front of this is a place for the wounded to recuperate. You don't have to rush to get started. Just follow and see the situation first. If you have any ideas, you can also talk to me. Gretel, what are you doing? It's okay. Gretel put down the contact device in his hand and quietly put away the space device. Suddenly I want to send a message to my mother. It seems that I can't connect here. It doesn't matter. It will be the same if I go back and send it again. That's right, Elder Batista smiled understandingly. He didn't say that he could send it, nor did he ask what is the principle of your liaison device, nor did he give Gretel directions to the signal is better here. He transformed back into a silver dragon, opened his wings and flapped his wings, signaling Greet and the others to get on his back, and led them to fly forward. Not long after flying, I heard an explosion in front of me, and the light screen expanded rapidly outwards, then shattered like rain. Behind the light screen, A high-pitched scream echoed endlessly through the clouds and cracked rocks. From the room made of light curtains, a head popped out in a panic. "Elder, you are back. Look at Gould. He is dying." "Gretel? Do you want it to be so exciting? As soon as you get to Sky Dragon City, you encounter an emergency rescue. Moreover, is it the dragon that we want to save this time? Thanks to @0922 for the 5,000 starting coin reward. Boss, please use the web version next time for Apple mobile rewards. The mobile version will be taken away by Apple for a large sum, and you will get it 3 months later. The cat got a monthly debuff that caused him to bleed profusely today. He took a day off and only has 4,000 words left today. We'll continue to update tomorrow. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1485. The wind suddenly tightened, and the old silver dragon's speed increased silently. Gretel suddenly leaned back, then tightly grasped the thorns on Elder Batista's back, and began to throw various spells at himself. Bubble technique. Force field barrier. Deflect the shield. Elemental resistance. The power of a superior bull, the elegance of a superior cat, the tenacity of a superior bear. Prepare the radiant shield, prepare the ice shield, prepare the lightning shield. Be prepared. Be prepared for anything. When the old silver dragon rushes in, at least he can't hold him back. Is it an emergency rescue? According to his previous habits, he must be the first to charge. Even if he is not the first, he cannot be lazy. Help with cardiopulmonary resuscitation, intubation, and intravenous access. Even if you hear the greeting and rush over to get blood, and then rush over with the blood bag in your arms, that's still a help, isn't it? In the midst of his busy schedule, he turned around and saw that Cyrilla was grabbing another thorn of the old silver dragon and was also racing against time to cast various spells on his body. After finishing the brushing, I started to take out my pockets, touch the equipment, put on the equipment, and prepare to inspire. Just as he finished his work, he suddenly felt a shock. Before Greet could react, he had already seen Cyrilla flying lightly and being left behind the old silver dragon. At the same time, he himself was also thrown off. While he was still in the air, he saw the old silver dragon speeding up, turning, and rushing into the shattered light curtain in front of him. "Hello!" Gretel screamed. "What does it mean? Don't take me? Is there a problem inside?" Old Yinlong ignored him. While charging, he spread his wings to the limit and then retracted them one by one. Those light strips, light ribbons, light filaments, and large and small light fragments that had exploded into strands, flying and floating, miraculously returned to their original positions, forming another perfectly integrated light curtain. Through the continuously flowing light curtain, one could vaguely see the heads, tails, and flapping shadows of several giant dragons' wings. One could also hear the painful screams, which could not be blocked and overflowed through the light curtain. From time to time, there was a small explosion, but it was blocked by the old silver dragon, so the light curtain did not break again, and nothing hit them. Not strong enough. Gretel suddenly sighed. In the previous life, everyone was made of flesh and blood, and no one had more lives than anyone else. At least during the emergency rescue, everyone rushed in equally. But in this world, you are not strong enough, and you are not even qualified to stand in front of patients. Otherwise, let alone treatment, any injury that occurs on the patient may kill the doctor. When I was in Nevis, I helped my senior sister treat her injuries. The senior brother felt like he was facing a powerful enemy and wrapped himself in a layer of fire curtain. At that time, I was not yet at level 9, and now that I am at level 15, it is the same. Unable to maintain the state of an adult dragon stably and for a long time, he is not even qualified to stand in front of a group of senior adult dragons, mature dragons, legendary dragons, and even dragons above legends. The so-called taking a look is really just looking outside from a distance. Then why is he here? He left the hospital on Dragon Island, the Mage Tower, and so many patients who traveled thousands of miles to the hospital, put aside the half-finished research in the Research Institute, and flew to Dragon City in the sky. What was he doing here? Just came here to see what's new. Do you know there is such a place? He glanced at Sarara, who glanced at him, shrugged and spread their hands. Then, Cyrilla remained silent, transformed into the silver dragon state, and stood in front of Gretel. Greet flew onto her back, leaning on the longest thorn at the junction of her nape and spine, brushing and brushing, adding another layer of defense to Cyrilla, and another layer of defense. Be prepared for anything. When does the light curtain open? Let's rush in together. If one layer is not enough, use 2 layers. If 2 layers are not enough, use 3 layers. The 2 of us support and protect each other. 1 plus 1 is definitely greater than 2. The 2 of them were ready for everything, holding their breath and staring at the light screen opposite. After waiting for about half an hour, the light curtain suddenly opened a gap, and a piece of colorful light fragments flew out in a swirl, passing by Sarara's shoulder. Star Cloak. Spell Invalidation Barrier. Iron Wall. Gap Field. Gretel quickly threw out a bunch of shield spells to protect Cyrilla. The colorful light fragments scratched through 1, 2, and 3 shields, and were finally deflected perfectly, not even hitting Sarara's own protection. Greet breathed a sigh of relief and stared at the light screen opposite. It was just a piece of debris that made them feel like they were facing a formidable enemy. Inside. Yeah, not bad. The light curtain inside suddenly moved, as if someone was pulling the curtain with hooks from both sides, elegantly parting to both sides. Old Silver Dragon's mellow voice sounded. Come inside and take a look. Little girl, why are the shelves so big? Make them smaller so I can protect you. Why? Cyrilla responded happily and crisply, her wings fluttered slightly and shrank in a flash. From the size of an adult dragon, to the size of a young dragon, and then to the size of an adolescent dragon. At this size, when Gretel stood on her back and hugged her neck with his hands, his eyes happened to pass over the top of her head. As soon as he touched the old silver dragon, he quickly took it back and added a layer of protection for Cyrilla. My body size has shrunk, and I wonder if my strength has also shrunk. Anyway, when he uses the transformation technique, he does shrink. If his strength is small, he needs to provide more protection. Although Sarara's size shrunk, her speed was not slow. She spread her wings and flapped gently, and soon she reached the center of the room. Gretel stood on her back and looked around. He saw that the entire room, or rather, the entire treatment room composed of light curtains, was full of potholes from the walls to the ceiling to the floor. One by one, colorful light fragments are embedded in the light curtain, and each fragment is surrounded by a vortex. Constantly consuming and absorbing. If you observe carefully, you can still see those fragments crackling and exploding into several pieces. Did you see clearly? The elder looked back at Gretel, followed his gaze, and pointed to his feet. This kind of energy damage is very troublesome. The most annoying thing is that after entering the body, it wanders around and absorbs the host's power to strengthen itself. We spent a lot of effort to expel most of the energy, and now there is still some remaining in the body. Sigh. Greet nodded repeatedly. When he expanded his mental power and observed the colorful light fragments, he became more cautious. Sarara even quickened her pace, until she reached the center of Elder Batista, then returned to her human form and leaned against his legs. The elder looked down at them. A whirlwind swept them both up his back, and pointed forward. Come, and take a look. The wounds left by this kind of injury look like this. Gretel grabbed the thorns on the elder's back, moved to the right, moved to the edge, and looked around. A black adult dragon lies in the center of the room. The scales are not pure black or gray, but black with gray, gray with blue, and a little metallic color. Black dragon? Brown dragon? It can't be a steel dragon, right? If you look closely, you will see that there are countless holes on the scales. Some have just healed and still have distinctive pale traces. Some skins were torn open, and rainbow-colored blood gurgled out. Others seem to have exploded from the inside, with scales, skin, and muscles all opening up into a small mouth. In other words, the dragon's body is huge and its ability to endure serious injuries is strong enough. For a human being, 1 or 2 of these wounds would be enough to kill him. Hiss. This hurts a bit badly. The giant metallic dragon lay on the ground completely motionless from the tip of its tail to its belly, from its neck to its head. Led by Elder Batista, several silver dragons surrounded him and kept throwing healing spells at him. Gretel secretly extended his mental power and threw a detection magic, and was instantly blinded by the glare. So strong. So strong. These healing techniques are at least level 8 or 9, right? After such a powerful energy sweep, as long as there is still breath, or as long as the cells still have some activity, they can be pulled up. He couldn't see clearly where the healing technique was concentrated, so he had to change the observation target and move further away. Move all the way further along the dragon's towering back, backward, backward, the root of the tail, the middle part of the tail, the tip of the tail. It wasn't until he focused his attention on the tip of his tail that Greet could barely see clearly, and instantly took another breath of air. 2 holes were blown open on the tip of the hard triangular tail, one on the left and one on the right. Under the dragon scales, there is still an unknown amount of alien energy buried densely in the bones and muscles. It's like a handful of asbestos filaments broken into a muscle. You can't pinch it out, and you can't pull it out. You may not feel it at ordinary times, but if you concentrate carefully, you may feel a strong foreign body sensation. To cut and remove the foreign body, the action of cutting itself may cause more harm to the patient than the harm caused by these asbestos filaments. Did you see it? Elder Batista suddenly asked. Greet nodded vigorously. I saw it. What should I do? We can only let him wrap it up with his own energy and slowly wear it away, the elder said solemnly. After giving this instruction, he focused his attention on the patient. He waved his hand lightly, and a cloud of air enveloped Gould, turning him over onto his back, exposing his bloody lower abdomen. Several heads came together, dragon roars came and went, and they kept discussing. Can you draw it out? It's very difficult. Just let it explode. This place is too troublesome. If it explodes here, Gould will be useless. What about cutting it off? Cut it off directly and then use magic to regenerate the limbs. It's not convenient, there are too many alien energies around, thin and dense. Before the discussion could come to a conclusion, there was a crackling sound, and Gould's screams rose again. The elder sighed. It's hopeless, cut it. I don't want it, I just got married and I don't have children yet, Ketakalioti is still waiting for me. Gould's scream suddenly became louder. It's the end of the month. Everyone, search your ticket folder and vote for the cat as soon as possible. There is no double monthly ticket this month, and it seems there is no monthly ticket sprint. Don't wait any longer and vote quickly.